So I was thinking, as I was watching everyone come out of the sessions, that this was going to be a little bit more like a stand-up comedy session rather than a conference. But unfortunately, I'm not a stand-up comedian, although you may like some of my slides. So often when I'm presenting, I'm a little bit nervous because while I might look like I've got everything under control, on the inside it kind of looks more like this guy. And if you've ever done some public speaking, then you might understand what that might mean. One of the challenges in these sorts of events is that we talk a lot about technology and we don't talk a lot about people and the reason why we're in business together. And as an example, often I like to try this little exercise and we'll see how you go, because you're all standing, which is fantastic, and not everyone has a drink. So what I'd like you to do is buddy up with someone. So if you can find another person who's close by, and I want you to do... Hey, we've got some buddies here. If you've got two hands... Who's got two hands free? So this is going to be a challenge. If you've got two hands free, I want you to hold hands with the person next to you. Okay, and so cross them over like this. Oh, first base. Now the challenge is, that's right. So the challenge is, can you get the other person off the ground? So who can do this? Who can get the other person off the ground by holding hands? Oh my God, it's hard, isn't it? Who's doing it? We've got some people over here. Anyone else trying it out? Got... Oh, on your toes. No? Okay. So what normally happens when you don't have drinks in your hands is that the only way to do this is to jump. And you do this, and normally what happens is you'll see someone start jumping out of the corner of your eye and suddenly the whole room starts jumping. Now the reason this works is because we are smarter together than we are by ourselves. And you find that spreads super quickly. You'll find that someone starts over here and it moves across the crowd really, really super fast. And the reason that works is because as humans, we've evolved in such a way that we work as social beings and we're able to tap into our knowledge and experience of other people very, very fast. And that's particularly important when we're thinking about technology and understanding where we're going in this future of work and how we might be able to use technologies in such a way to make our lives a bit better, faster and more collaborative. When I started working many, many years ago, I used to have to use one of these Bundy clocks. Does anyone ever remember those? Yeah, some people. Awesome. So every day I used to work in a quick service restaurant called Sizzler. Do you remember Sizzler? And so I'd rock up 10 minutes before my shift and I'd change into my special outfit and my bow tie, and I would find my name on the big list and I would grab that name and I'd put it in and it would Bundy me on. And then the system would collate my hours each week and magically money would appear in my bank account after we were all paid. And so this was my first introduction to technology and work in a technology sense. But then I went and worked in an accounting firm and I had a new experience called timesheets. And we broke down our time into quarter of an hour blocks, and so we had to account for every 15 minutes, and we put down 4 units every single hour. And it was a joy, right? We're all still using some form of these things. And the thing that really got to me about this approach to work was that we're being measured on the transaction value of my time, not the value that I was providing to my customers. And this started to make me think, I don't like it much. But the amazing thing about all this is the future of work's kind of already arrived. Remember George Jetson? I used to think that he had the best job in the world because he was so hard at work pushing buttons like this that he was wearing out his fingertips. And in a way, he was just typing really fast. what we've found is that the future of work has arrived, snuck up on us under our noses, and it's already happening in our place. And it's snuck up on us over time in a way that kind of was expected, but also wasn't expected. So back in 2010, I was working for SAP on a global project. And we realised that 5 years out, if we looked at 2015, which is this year, right? We looked at 2015 and we realised we wouldn't have the people in place in our global organisation to deliver on the projects that were due this year. So that meant that we had a risk in 2010, 5 years away, that we knew we couldn't deliver on. And it was going to impact our share market value, it was going to impact our capacity to deliver to customers, and it was going to impact our bonuses. So we really had to figure this one out. And the big shift here was the demographics. So in 1945, there were lots and lots of people born, from 1945 onwards, and that's the baby boomers. So they're now in their 60s and early 70s, and they're all starting to retire. And the stats were amazing. 65 million people are retiring this year, and they will continue to retire at a similar rate for the decade ahead. And who are they being replaced by? Gen Y, Gen Z. So there's a massive gap in terms of their experience, their capabilities, their expertise, and what is being and the people they're replacing. So we're running serious risks in terms of understanding what is going to happen with our business. And these new generations have a different sense of work, right? If you look on LinkedIn and you do a search, you'll find that there's about 40,000 Australians who identify themselves as freelancers. So they like the idea of being freelance. They like the idea of being a subcontractor or a self-contractor or their own boss, what we sometimes call lifestyle entrepreneurs. That means I get enough work just to keep myself having a good time, and then I can go off and do other things. And these people exist all over the place. You meet them all the time. And I've got a friend of mine, she's 22 years old, and she is working really hard right now in the lead up to September, when she's going to go to South America for 6 months and not speak to anybody. So she's working really hard in this way, which is she's driving her own self and her own business towards an end point, and then she's going to come back and do it all again. She's going to start again from scratch. And this is completely fine for her. But what we're finding is that if we want to look at the future of work, then we have to understand the future of work now. And the future of work now is really quite simple in that it's what I call the 3 Ps: policies, purpose, and practices. So from a policy point of view, you need to create the conditions which allow people to operate in these new ways. So you need to make sure that networks are open, that you have tools that support those ideas and those policies. You need purpose. So are you able to tap into the motivation of your employees? Are you able to tap into their expertise, no matter where it happens to be? In case your employees are like Steph and they go and live in South America for 6 months, and you still need to know what they know. And the same thing with practices. So what we need to do is start demonstrating the practices and rolling these practices into ways of behaviour across our organisation that allow these flexible forms of working to work. And I saw a tweet come out earlier today from this conference that said 6% of people, only 6% of Australians are taking advantage of flexible work practices. 6%. So if that was indicative of this room, it'd be like the guys in this corner. That's kind of ridiculous, considering what you can do and what you can achieve. But it means that we've got this gap in these 3 Ps. If you embrace these 3 Ps, and I feel like we have no choice but to do this, because what we're finding is we need to find ways to embrace this disruption and unleash the creativity in our business. And we can't do that if we're still stuck in the old ways of doing things. To understand how this might work, we look at the foundations of work. And we look at the idea of the how, where, and why of work. And that's kind of, quite simple, right? So how we work, we've been doing the same sort of work over and over again. So we all go into offices, which is the where. We all sit down at our desks and work in our cubicles. And why? Well, we get paid. It's awesome. It's just like Bundy on, but we're Bundying on in a different mindset. And what we now have is this fantastic overlay of technology. Now, if I was a great graphic designer and I could do 3D art, I would show this as floating on the top. So I'm sure today you've all heard of the SMAC model, the stack called SMAC. Social, Mobile, Analytics and Cloud. Now these are really cool, and they've come out of the technology space and they're revolutionising the way that other businesses and other industries are doing work. They're changing the way that we understand what it means to be mobile, to be social, to understand the analytics of our business, and to do it wherever and whenever we want. That's the cloud piece. So understanding these bits and pieces and how they sit over the top of your how, where and why means that you're able to then tap into your employees in a much more impressive way. And even better than that, anyone use Zapier? 2, 3. Oh man. Okay, so Zapier. Who's heard of Zapier? Like all of you. So it's this really cool tool, and it basically plugs 400 different apps together, and it gives you an integration between different apps in the cloud. It uses the internet like the internet is supposed to be used. It allows you to connect up things like Outlook to Microsoft Access, to Jive, to Joomla, to Odesk. It allows you to do all sorts of cool things. And you don't need to be a programmer. You don't need a developer. You just need to have access to an account for these things to work. So it means that I can take a photo, and that photo is me with my client, where I'm doing a selfie with my client. Here I am, Gavin. Great. And I just tag my client by their Twitter handle. And when I send that to Twitter, because of Zapier, it goes, great, I got that. I'm going to send that over to my CRM and say, this is Gavin with such and such. You were at this event because your location-based information is already on your phone, and you're applying it to a CRM record which says, we were here together and we were talking about such and such. Now that's kind of simple things you can do without really trying hard. It took me 15 minutes to do that sort of integration. Now it's unheard of before. Now, the way that if we think about this foundation of work, and then we think about where we want to go and what the opportunities are with these platforms on top, then it changes the way we understand work. And it changes the way that we get our sense of purpose and our sense of drive in our own organisations. So a guy called Dan Pink wrote this fantastic book called Drive, where he's looking at the motivations of employees. And he says that if you take money off the table, and I know that's kind of like blasphemy, right? You take money off the table, and then there are 3 things that change people's motivation. And that is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So gone are the days of using the carrot and the stick. Don't you love this picture? What you're looking for these days are ways of tapping into this autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So autonomy is the desire to direct our own lives. So who likes to be micromanaged? Hands up. We've got one guy at the back here. Awesome. Everyone likes their own sense of autonomy. What does that really mean in practice? It means things like delegation. Can you take on tasks and can you be responsible for them? Do you have a mandate for those activities? Can you actually drive authority and representativeness across your organisation? And can you be self-directed? Do you have to be micromanaged? Can you do things that you're supposed to be doing when you're expected to? And similarly with mastery, I like to be good at things. So how do I find ways of being good at things? How do I tap into competency? How do I tap into experience? And how do I tap into support? How do I make sure that the structures of my business are available to me that support me in those decisions? How do I exercise my own judgment and showcase my maturity in business decision making to make this happen? And then finally, look at purpose. So again, coming back to what gets people to be interested and excited about coming to work. That happens at a number of levels as well. So self, your own sense of, I would like to be involved here. I'd like to be understand and recognised as an expert in my field, in my organisation. But I also like that to happen at my team level. And I like to have a sense that my company is doing the right things, that we're doing good things. And from a society point of view, that we're also having a social impact, that there's a contract with our employees, with our partners, with our customers that goes beyond just transactions. And this is the convergence that we've seen, I guess, in the last 20 years, where we've got communications, collaboration, and creativity that is really coming together in an interesting way to drive not just the way that we add value to our customers, but how it informs our products and our approach to business. In fact, what we're seeing is this what and where piece is really challenging because it's disrupting the how, where and why. In terms of what, who caught an Uber here today? Anyone? Who's heard of Uber? Excellent, everyone. So Uber's an interesting model because these are people who are like us. They're earning a bit of extra money on the side. What about Odesk? Has anyone used Odesk as a resourcing tool? Fiverr? Has anyone got a $5 logo from someone? TaskRabbit. Who gets their... Oh, we've got a TaskRabbit. Excellent. So you can get your dry cleaning done, you can get logos done, you can get marketing plans done. This is actually tapping into unutilised resources and expertise in the community out there. And what we've found through the Future of Work Research Monitor is that 92% of Australians are looking to supplement their income, with 68% thinking about using these social platforms to do that. So there's opportunities to extend your income to actually build experience into your own life balance, I guess, and then use that money to further your own career. So you can make choices about what you do, when you do it, and who you work for, completely independent of what you do for work. And it's as simple as using online tools. It's how you communicate. It's how you connect in with people. It's how you are even transact. So you use PayPal, for example, just to process the fees. And Tom Goodwin, who's a guy from Havas Media, has this great article recently where he says Uber is the world's largest taxi company and it has no vehicles. And Facebook is the world's largest media company and it has no content writers. And Alibaba has no inventory. So we're seeing these business models that are completely different in terms of what they do from what we've done in the past. And they're all being enabled by these digital models, by these SMAC models, and by these audiences that are willing and ready to communicate in a digital way. So the where piece, has anyone worked in a co-working space? Excellent. So what about an incubator or a startup? Yeah, excellent. So what we're finding is people choose these alternative careers, but they also choose alternative spaces. So rather than, like, if I travel into the city, it takes me an hour, right? If I can halve that time by going to a co-working space that's relatively close, then that half-hour time is either for my productivity, for work, or it's for leisure. So it means that I've got an extra half an hour each way. An hour in my day is worth a lot to me. It's worth more than the charge-out rate, right? So finding ways of tapping into the different types of where we can work and why we can work is essential to this approach. And it means that we get able to tap into this thing about feeling healthier. 70% of people say when they work in a co-working space that they like it better because it makes them feel healthier. And we're able to get more tasks done. I get certainly more work done when I'm not in an office space. And I can be more productive and focused, 68%. It's amazing when you think about what you are doing and when you're working and what you're losing by being in the wrong sort of space. And that's really where the reason is that culture eats location. So whether you want to or not, and whether you think it's true or not, the challenge with working in these spaces or working outside of those spaces is not to do with the fact that they're not close by, it's that your organisation doesn't allow for it, that it's frowned upon, that the people that make their way in the organisations, that achieve, that are promoted in the organisation, are the ones that turn up in an office each day, not the ones who produce the outcomes that you're looking for. And we're seeing this shift struggling at the moment because we need to address that cultural aspect. We can have technology as far as the eye can see, we can have great NBN, but if we don't have a cultural shift, then we're going to have a challenging uptake in terms of the technology. And activity-based working is one way of approaching this. So we're seeing a little bit of this taking place in the organisation itself. Does anyone have a flexible working place, like, meeting rooms that are kind of cool and rugs that are kind of on the floor and hanging out or on the wall even? That makes the workplace feel like a little bit of a nicer place to work. And over the weekend, a good example of this is what Deloitte are doing at the moment. And over the weekend, we ran a hackathon for Qantas. And the Deloitte guys sent up a team to deal with the hackathon and try and win the prize, which is actually what they did. Now, when I saw their names on the list, I was a bit surprised because I thought Deloitte are going to be wanting to, charge for this project, right? But they saw this as an opportunity to send their guys out to work on a project that was of their own making. They could choose the project, they could identify the problems, they could work through those issues, they could be in command of their own skills and capabilities and approaches. They were able to then demonstrate their capabilities, not just to Qantas and to the teams, but also to their entire organisation. So when they won at the end of the day, they were very excited, not just because they won, but because they were able to go back and tell that story at work and then get the recognition and kudos from within the organisation. And Qantas themselves are doing really cool stuff with their digital workplace. You can see they've got the mobile, the tablet, and the laptop here. But their focus here is not just on the technologies. Their focus is on having a vision for where they want to go. And the vision is this seamless unification of technology around creating knowledge and promoting culture. So the promoting of culture is essential when you've got 30,000 people who work around the country and are spread across the world. So finding ways of imbuing your culture in the technology and driving that sort of interaction and engagement is really, really vital. So what does it mean to look into the future? 5 impacts of new media. So when we're coping with something new, we tend to have these 5 reactions. The first one is expertise. We don't know who the experts are anymore. The things that I did know, I no longer count for the same sort of value. The organisational transformation. We need to make some changes in what we do and how we do it. And the social and legal norms like copyright and who owns what. Where does that sit? That's often a challenge as well. Over here in terms of concepts of identity and community, who are we and what's important in our organisations? And finally, education. What do we need to know to make our lives more successful in the future? And by understanding those 4 things, or those 5 things, and then applying the 3 Ps to that practice, you can start to figure out what you need to do to make future of work useful in your own organisation. And one way of understanding this is to understand maybe the expertise, the organisation, the norms and conventions, the identity, community and language, and the education processes that need to take place. And a friend of mine is a futurist, and he's always said to me that if you want to understand the future, then you need to look double the distance into the past. So if we want to look 10 years into the future, we need to look 20 years into the past. So looking back at 1995, what can we see? We can see there are some interesting challenges here around expertise, that it was technology driven, that it was secretive. We had Windows and we had SAP R3, we had desktops and green screens. We had a job for life. No, who has a job for life anymore? 2015, we have multi-careers, we have smartphones, we have clouds, we have open infrastructures, and we have networks. But in 2025, this all changes again. So if we look further out, we're having these micro-careers, just like we're seeing now. We're having robots and automation taking over some of the things that we're already doing. And we're also having automatrics. So with things like automated, data-driven insights into the work that we do. That's just at that expertise level. The same thing applies at organisational level, where once we rushed to digitise our assets, we're now going to rush to humanise things. We're going to rush to figure out what is human in our workplace and why that's important. In norms and conventions, we started off with storytelling, which was a great concept, and we had arts and we had multiculturalism. But now we have story sharing. We have these technologies that allow us to do these really cool things. And we have this rush to digitise the process of what it is that we do. Eventually where we're heading is we're trading what it is that we know to be human for the machine. So everyone, you'll often find that there's the retargeting of ads that you see on the internet follow you around the internet as you go. And this is just part of the simple parts of automation that we've already started to see. This will become smarter and faster and probably a little bit more creepy as we go along. In terms of the identity and culture and language, what we're finding is we're going from names to handles. So we're often being recognised by the handles we have online, say for example on Twitter. If you go to a tweet up, you'll find people that you've never met before, and then you'll be able to connect with those people, but you'll remember them not for their real names, but for their Twitter handles. So mine is Servant of Chaos, and often people say, oh, hello, Servant of Chaos, I know who you are, but they can't remember my name, which is Gavin. And then we're going to see that this actually shifts to something more complicated, like a profile, where our profiles are enabled in real time across these networks and are instantly available to whoever wants to connect with us. This is going to change what it is that we consider is important in terms of our identity and the way that we approach business and that we approach personal life and how those two mesh together. And then finally, down here on education, there used to be a great push to IT skills. We used to see lots of people going, we need more programmers, we need more engineers, and there was a really great push in terms of arts and technology. We're now seeing more focus on business, and we're seeing this rise of the creative industries and this really intense focus on how we get the best value out of our technology and how we're able to drive value for our organisations in creative ways to tap into the business in our organisation and the customer base that's outside it. And then finally, where that goes is towards industrial creativity, where we're starting to industrialise the creativity that we're seeing in the marketplace. We're able to tap into a focus on innovation so that we can look at that as a differentiator in our marketplace and transform not just the way that we do work, but the way that our customers buy and the way they experience what it is that we do. And that customer experience piece is going to be vital, because once we have that, then we have a reason for difference and a reason for service in our organisations. So the question really for me is, what's in your future and are you ready for it? And that's my presentation. Thank you.